So can I just get a confirmation, Jenny? Can you all see that fine? Yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks, Dermot. So you're very welcome. This is the Open Scholarship session on as part of the Library Research Toolkit series. I'm going to go over Open Scholarship and what that is, and some kind of funder requirements and mandates. And you're very welcome to ask any questions that you have. I just ask that you kind of hold them towards the end, because with this session, it just one thing seems to lead on to the next that bit more smoothly. So we'll do questions at the end. So when we talk about Open Scholarship, there's multiple terms that can be used that are interchangeable, and they can seem quite alienating. So Open Scholarship, Open Research, and Open Science all mean the same thing. There is a way. I'm just going to ask you to mute yourself there. There is a move towards away from using open science as the terminology, just because it can alienate some of the other disciplines that aren't that don't see themselves as traditional science. But in terms of what it means here, is it refers to open science as like open research, or exploration, really, and having it openly available. So Open Scholarship, Open Research, Open Science all mean the same thing, and they refer to the transparent and accessible sharing of knowledge, including publications, the data, and making its dissemination freely and accessible to all. And when we talk about the dissemination piece, that's where open access comes in. And so open access it falls underneath the umbrella of Open Scholarship. So open access means the electronic scholarly research outputs are made freely available on the web to all, with no or with very limited license restrictions. So there are huge benefits to Open Scholarship, and it's really important to kind of be aware of those. So for researchers, it allows greater visibility and reach for your work, and it allows increased efficiency. If you have experience of working with Open Scholarship or publishing through open access, you have you're a better return on investment for funders, because they know what that open landscape is like. You have experience operating within that realm, and it's great for the general public. It's faster knowledge transfer, increased understanding and expertise, and it promotes engagement in research and in science and exploration in general. And it also can be really it can really lend itself well to evidence-informed policy making, human rights advocacy and democracy, things like that. And it can lead to more effective advocacy and lobbying in the field of your specific research, if that's relevant. So open access, again, as I said, falls within the Open Scholarship umbrella. So open access refers to the dissemination and making it openly and freely accessible to all. So it guarantees more exposure for your work, and that's the first and foremost. But practitioners can also apply your findings that bit easier. It's more accessible to them. Open access, it's proven that open access publications generally garner higher citation rates. Your research can influence policy. So you can, if you're thinking about that kind of broader societal impact piece, open access can be really, really beneficial. The public can access your findings, and that's really important. A lot of funders, a lot of public funding, public taxpayers are paying for this research to be carried out, and then they're not getting a lot of access to it if it exists behind a paywall. So open access kind of gives that research back to the public that funded it. It also, open access, by publishing through open access, you can be more compliant with grant rules. And we're going to talk about that as we move forward. There is a move towards funding bodies mandating a open access element or open components to the application process. And we need to be aware of that in order to remain compliant. And research in developing countries can see your work. Researchers there can engage with that work, which is great. And it's really important to think about research globally and not just, for our own individual careers' sake. So there are 8 pillars of open science. I'm not going to go into them in too much detail here today because I'm conscious this is a nice short lunchtime session. So the 8 pillars of open science refer to fair data. Actually, our resident data manager is here with us today. So if there's any questions around that, I'm sure she'll be able to field some of them. And we do have a session that covers that coming up as well. So we have research integrity, next generation metrics, future of scholarly communication, and that's that move towards open access, and that's kind of going to be baked in that bit more. Citizen science involving the public in research, education and skills, research and innovation, and then European Open Science Cloud as well. So when we talk about open access, it's really important that we look at what are the routes to achieving open access. And when we talk about routes to open access, the language that's used to describe the various routes has a color to describe, to differentiate the 3 avenues. It's really important to note that these colors don't mean one is better than the next. They're just a color to differentiate them. Neither route is necessarily a better or a more successful or will earn more, it'll earn more citations. That's not necessarily the case. So gold open access refers to publishing in subscription-based journal platforms that now offer researchers an opportunity to make their articles openly accessible at the point of publication. So gold open access will generally carry an article processing charge with that. Now there are ways to kind of to waive those, and we'll talk about them as we go on. But basically that's what open access refers to, gold open access refers to. It is publishing in a subscription-based journal, but making it openly accessible at the point of publication. And these can be referred to as transformative agreements or open access publishing agreements, but that's what gold open access refers to. And then green open access refers to self-archiving your work and your publications in a trusted open access research repository. And that's really vital. It's important to kind of to be aware of where you're publishing, and a trusted source could be Research Repository UCD. And it's really important that this is considered in addition to your publication in a traditional, maybe subscription-based journal or somewhere else as well. So this isn't kind of your only avenue of publication. And then diamond open access refers to open access journals that have no article processing charge. So it's a fully open access journal. The article will be made open access immediately upon publication, but there is no charge of an APC. So we talked a little bit about funder requirements, and Plan S and SFI and Horizon Europe mandate that there are open access elements to their funding applications. So this applies to any applications or any publications submitted after the 1st of January 2021, that journal articles and conference proceedings must be published open access immediately and must carry a CC BY license as well. So SFI requests that researchers should include the CC BY rights retention strategy language provided by SFI's open access policy on all manuscripts submitted for publication, regardless of publication venue. So regardless of whether you publish in a gold open access, through diamond open access, it doesn't matter. You still have to attach the CC BY rights retention strategy. And the reason for that is it ensures that the intellectual property and copyright stay with the author. And that's where we're trying to kind of move towards, and not kind of handing over all of these rights to publishers. So the SFI rights retention strategy language looks like this here. So this is an example. This publication has emerged from research conducted with financial support or supported in part by Science Foundation Ireland under grant number X. And for the purpose of open access, the author has applied a CC BY public copyright license to any author accepted manuscript version arising from this submission. So that's really important. The CC BY license basically gives readers and users a better idea of how they can engage with that work, how they can reuse that, while ensuring that the credit and the attribution still goes to the author as well. So Horizon Europe also has mandates too. So Horizon Europe mandates full and immediate open access by peer-reviewed publications under an open access license like CC BY. Now there are variations of this Creative Commons licenses like CC BY that some get slightly more restricted if there is maybe a commercial element to the research or some other reason that you might need to put a slightly more restrictive license on the work. And there is a really useful tool as well for choosing that. And it's just this Creative Commons license choosing tool. And that's really useful for kind of figuring out which of those licenses is the most relevant for you. So Horizon Europe also asks you to show how you will adopt open scholarship practices as relevant to the discipline, including mandatory open science practices. So you need to have kind of an awareness of, how open science or open scholarship, is how your discipline can implement as much of that as possible. So Horizon Europe also asks that you're responsible for the management of your research data in line with FAIR principles, and that's trying to make them as findable, as accessible as possible, and it's really important that, and reusable as well. So it's really important that we are aware of that and we acknowledge that in any applications moving forward. Just because you're considered that bit more of a better return on investment, that you're aware of the landscape and what goes into this. So it's important to show how you're going to offer digital or physical access to the results needed to validate the conclusions of scientific publications. Are you going to share the data? Things like that. And then a copy of the published version or the final author accepted manuscript must be deposited in a trusted research repository that's open access at the time of publication. And it's really important to note that within Horizon Europe applications, even where the article has been published in a fully open access journal, or even within a gold open access journal where it is open access, you still have to have it in a green open access repository in addition to your other venue of publication. So that is vital. So when talking about Horizon Europe, where relevant to the discipline and the proposal, it's important to consider to include details of how you will adopt some of the following. So early and open sharing of research. So indicate how you might share your research on preprint servers. Use the use of open research infrastructure or knowledge sharing and research dissemination. Researchers should also give specific details of where and how they will deposit their research outputs under open licenses. And give details of any open access publishing venues that you plan to submit to. So for example, here I've referenced the UCD open access publishing agreements, which we're going to talk about in a moment, but giving an awareness from the outset of where you might be able to publish, to show that you've been thinking strategically about your publication venue and how you plan to arrive at that open access from the outset can be really beneficial to you as an applicant, because it shows the funders that this open access requirement isn't an afterthought for you, and you're kind of preempting that, and you're making sure it's important from the very get-go. So some actions to increase the reproducibility of your research: participate in open peer review, or engage in things like that may include co-design, so workshops, focus groups, co-creation, maybe directly involving citizens or users in data collection, or co-assessment, so involvement and in feedback or monitoring of the project. So that can also be a great way of increasing the reproducibility of your research. So we've kind of hinted towards the UCD and IRL open access publishing agreements, and these are really, really useful. They can be great. This is our version of the gold open access route, where we try to avoid the cost of article processing charges. So to avail of these agreements, you must be currently affiliated with UCD, and you must be the corresponding author for the publication must be the UCD affiliated author and then you can avail of this agreement to publish open access at no cost. So each agreement with the publisher is is different, and they have different terms and conditions that you need to check. And that's really important. Some of the journals that are included, it may not cover all of the journals within each publisher. So approximately 70% of Elsevier journals are covered. And then within that, there are further limitations. There's only certain publishers will only have a specific number of APCs available. For example, you might have 200 APCs available for a specific publisher. And these are granted on a first come, first served basis by date of acceptance. So that's really important to be aware of that, because when you submit, that's not when the date is it doesn't count from the date of submission, it counts from the date of acceptance. And that acceptance process can take anywhere from, a couple of months to, 6, 7 months, maybe 2 years. And that will dictate whether or not you're able to avail of the open access publishing agreements. So the Research Repository UCD as a trusted open access, green open access route is really useful. And the Research Repository UCD is a digital collection of green open access scholarly research publications from UCD. The repository collects, preserves, and makes freely available publications, including peer-reviewed articles, working papers, and conference papers created by UCD researchers. So it's really important to be aware of Research Repository UCD and how useful that is. And how it's, if you go down the open access publishing agreement route and you run out of APCs and you can't cover your open access article processing charge, there is the option of publishing your work behind the paywall in the subscription version of your journal, and self-archiving a version of it within the Research Repository UCD or another trusted open access repository. So if you do go down that route, sometimes there is embargoes associated with specific publishers. Now, these change a lot based on your publication venue. Sometimes they vary within the journals specifically, not just by publisher to publisher. So it's important to find that out. And that might restrict the access to your research by maybe 6 months. It could be 12 months, could be 2 years. So it's important to be aware of that. So that won't be a route if you have a funder requirement that needs you to have immediate open access. But where you don't have that immediate open access requirement, that can be another avenue to kind of waive the open access article processing charge as well. So when submitting to the Research Repository UCD, it's really important that you submit the correct version. It has to be the author accepted manuscript, because that's what you have the intellectual right to. So that is the accepted version after all the peer review and all revisions, but not the final published version. So it can't have any publisher logos, any copy editing, any of the kind of layout or branding that publishers might bring into it. It has to be before that. So it looks like something like this image here. So when considering your open access, how you're going to publish your work through open access, it's important to kind of have a look at the LibGuide, look at what your options are, and consider the open access publishing agreement. Is your journal covered? If yes, then check, are there any other restrictions or terms and conditions, and make sure that the corresponding author is affiliated with UCD. And it's important that you use your UCD physical and email address, because it makes, when submitting, because it makes the approval process that much more smoother and easier to make sure that your APC gets approved. So if your journal isn't covered, you may consider publishing the author accepted manuscript in the Research Repository UCD, and then use the rights retention text if the immediate open access is required by a funder. So about 80% of publishers will waive the embargo if there is a funder requirement to publish open access immediately. So there is always ways to work around things and to figure them out. So if not, then you can also pick a fully open access journal platform, and then you will have to pay any relevant APCs. Or, if it's a diamond open access journal, then there won't be an open access fee as well. So here are some, a link to loads and loads of diamond open access journals that have no APCs. So they are definitely an option to consider for open access, but I am aware that, you need to consider where is the best venue for your publication, and to look at kind of the performance factor of each journal and trying to find ways to meet your audience where they are. So have a look through here and see, the link is going to be in the slides that I'll share with you afterwards, and you'll be able to see if there's any journals that might be relevant to your area that you'll be able to look at publishing in. So some key takeaways from today. There are lots of benefits to publishing open access and open data, and great ways to kind of increase your visibility and engagement with your work. There are various routes to publishing open access. Neither is better than the other. It's just what is going to be most successful for you at any given time. And then it's important to remain compliant with funder requirements. Open access cannot be an open scholarship can't be an afterthought anymore. We need to consider it kind of from the very beginning of a project and throughout the life cycle as well. So I'm also going to include this link here to a feedback form, and I'd really appreciate anybody if you could just take 2 minutes to fill this out. It's only 5 short questions, but particularly we're really interested in hearing how you might like sessions like this to be delivered in the future. A face-to-face or an online webinar kind of format, that would be really beneficial for us to kind of support you guys moving forward as well. So I'm just going to open up to any questions. As I said, I'm going to share these slides with you after here. Yeah, then we're going to be good to go. So I'll stop sharing and welcome you guys to ask any questions. Jenny, Dermot, did you hit record there? Will you finish it?